Okay, good morning everyone, and thanks for attending. Yes, we're really excited because this is our fourth podcast, but it's our first live podcast. So I'm Ian McLaughlin. It's my privilege to lead the Business Growth West Midlands team, and we're going to talk to Kavita, our guest, about her business journey. So just so that everybody is aware, this session is part of the Growth Room podcast brought to you by Business Growth West Midlands. Our podcast is all about real growth stories from founders and business leaders across the region, not just the highlights, but the decisions, challenges and support that sit behind scaling a business. We focus on what happens after startup, so how businesses grow sustainably, enter new markets, build teams and navigate complexity without losing sight of purpose. So today's conversation is going to be exactly that. It's going to be practical, honest and rooted in the West Midlands. We're recording it live as part of the West Midlands Business Festival. So no coughing, heckling, shouting. Let's get started. So Kavita, you're the co-founder, Chief Commercial Officer of Word360, which is a multi-award-winning West Midlands headquartered language technology company, supporting over 750,000 people each year in over 350 languages and dialects to access essential services across health and social care. So since acquiring a small Handsworth-based interpreting business in 2013 and launching Word360 and WordSki in 2016, Kavita's helped scale Word360 into a UK-wide and international organisation working with 24,000 linguists globally and achieving up to 40% year-on-year growth, all while operating in a highly regulated environment. So welcome, Kavita.
Thank you.
So Word360 started with a what-if moment and a sketch on a napkin. Can you take us back to that point? What problem were you trying to solve, and how did your background as an optometrist help shape the idea?
Well, that was a very grand opening statement, so thank you for that. Yeah, actually, it goes back to when I originally went to university. I went to university doing optometry because I originally wanted to be an architect. And when I went to a careers convention, there was an architecture firm in the room and they said, oh no, don't want to be an architect, there's no job. This is going back a few years, it's like 94. And I'd got my A-levels, I'd planned to doing architecture, and then I was like, well, what do I do now if I can't do architecture? And my friend was doing optometry. And I thought, being an Indian, my parents were very proud to know that I was doing optometry, so I was a big tick, I'll go and do optometry. So I did optometry and I qualified and I started practicing, but I always knew that I wanted to do something on my own. I always knew that I wanted to break out and do my own business. And I practiced as a locum for about 10, 11 years. And then my first opportunity actually was, I took a bit of a leap of faith and I noticed a gap in the market for elderly and disabled people. So I used to do a lot of domiciliary work, so that means going into hospitals, going into nursing homes. And I noticed that people were wearing T-shirts and tracksuit bottoms, and they used to wear Prince of Wales. They'd served in the army, and they'd got Alzheimer's or they'd got a stroke, and they were not dressed in the way that they'd always been dressed. So I was like, hang on, there's an opportunity here. So this is when I took my first leap of faith, and I thought, you know what, I think I've got a gap in the market here. There's an unmet need, and I started up my first company, which is called Adapt4. It's probably still out there somewhere, but it was essentially clothing to help people with physical disabilities. So open back clothing, magnetic top, shirts, bras, things like that would help people get dressed. And it took off really well. But actually, that was probably my first barrier, as Daniela said, about knowing my limits. I didn't think that I could scale a business clothing company. And at that time, I became a baby factory. And I actually got approached by a lady who was in similar industry. She said, you know what, Kavita, that's a great idea. I'd love to buy it off you. And so very, very quickly, I'd sold the business and I had brought up my kids, went back to optometry for a couple of years, but I still had that need and desire to want to own my own company. And so I started looking again, and the opportunity presented itself for this interpreting business, which again was in Handsworth. It was about 4 or 5 people. And my partner and I were like, well, look, there's an opportunity here for us to build something that is quite different. Back then, everything was starting to globalise. This is 2016. People were starting to migrate more. And I thought, what if we could create language that could be accessible anytime, anywhere? And I, on the back of a napkin, thought, well, why can't I do something like an Uber for interpreters? And that's where the idea was born. And so back then, in 2016, there wasn't a lot of tech support around in Birmingham. You couldn't really find yourself a Node.js developer up the road, and I had no IT knowledge whatsoever. So I got this design of this tech, and I actually went to Europe. I went to Poland and Romania, and I asked them to design a proof of concept for me, which was WordSki. And they were sitting there like this going, here's a woman who doesn't know what she's on about, but yeah, we'll build this for you. So I'm going, I want a red button here, and I want it to be able to, put a request in here. And they were like, yeah, we can do that for you. Obviously, anybody who's in tech knows that's not how you build tech. And they built it for me. And that was the start of WordSki. When we bought this business, there was very archaic systems and processes. It was Excel spreadsheets, it was an Access database, and this was our opportunity to scale a business and to be able to go into regulated industries and offer language, in any language, 24 hours a day, anywhere in the UK at the time.
I'm particularly interested because I studied language at university, so I'm thinking about signing up after we've had the podcast, so thanks for that, Kavita. So that's how Word360 started, but looking at your journey, you're a woman in business, a woman in tech, you work in a highly regulated sector. We talked about limits, self-imposed limits or externally imposed limits. What barriers have you had to negotiate or break through?
I think my dad would say, I never listen, and that's probably been my strength, is that, I was always somebody who said, don't tell me I can't do something. And that's really been something that's underpinned my career, really. But I recognised that I was in a room full of tech experts. They had the tech authority, they had the leadership understanding. And I remember sitting in a room in Romania, in a room full of men, about 10 of them, and literally one guy was just rubbing his hands because he could go, right, how much can I get at this woman, because she really has no idea what she wants, and she just, but I knew that, right? I knew that was my limitation, so I had to fail fast, learn quickly, make mistakes, and accept that there was that unconscious bias, but it was about building my own credibility, and that's what I did. I understood over time, I made mistakes and started to learn what I needed to build as a system, microservice architecture, understand the kind of developments, understand my tech stack. And 3 iterations later, as you've said, we are able to process about 100,000 requests for language support every month. And that was down to the fact that I knew that I had a concept that would work. I had a self-belief, and I think that's really, really important when you're faced with adversity, when you're faced with people who don't necessarily believe that you can do it. I think it's the self-belief that you can. I did get it wrong, but it was a case of dusting myself off and going again. And that's what we did. First, biggest green tick, if you like, was when we won our first public sector contract. And that really demonstrated to us that we had something that people really wanted. And it grew out of that, really.
Great. So Word360 has grown really rapidly since those times, supporting hundreds of thousands of interactions each year. How did you know when the right time to scale up was?
I think running a business is like growing a tree. You have to build the right roots, you have to lay the right foundation. And that's the way that I built my business. If you grow too quickly, you grab a weak tree and a storm comes along and it's going to fall over. So for us, it was about laying those foundations and growing strong roots. And by strong roots, I spent the first couple of years not really scaling much at all. I needed to understand my customer. I needed to understand what made us good. Why were we great at what we did? And a big thing for me is customer service. I'm a stickler for customer service. We do a lot of work with healthcare in the NHS, so I had a duty of care for my patients to make sure that they could rely on the quality of language support that they were getting. We don't only just do languages, we did sensory support as well, so people with visual loss, hearing impairment, so it's great to see a BSL interpreter here today, making sure that we were giving those patients the best experience and making sure that there's an assured patient pathway, because ultimately that was what we were being paid to do. Yeah.
Good to see that quality is at the heart of what you do. Just thinking about the external support that you might have had, Kavita. Obviously, it can be lonely being an entrepreneur, but you said that you benefited from both public and private support over the years. Obviously, Business Growth West Midlands is here to provide some of that support. So just wondering about your experiences. How did that help you?
Yeah, I think I definitely needed support on a number of occasions. We needed to grow premises and find somewhere that would allow us to have our clients come over, but also allow us to recruit more people. So we got grant funding for that. The biggest game changer was when we had Goldman Sachs. So that was a big game changer for us. We'd grown a business to a certain size, but I knew my limitations. I knew that I didn't know much about HR. I didn't know much about numbers. Oh my God, learning how to read a balance sheet was a game changer, and every business should do that. And also learning about how do you scale at pace, but effectively such that you can sustain a growth when you get new business. So getting that support and being around your peers. I think things like the West Midlands Business Festival is incredible because it's about peer-to-peer learning for me. It's great listening to speakers and listening to people like myself, but actually it's talking through your own individual problems with like-minded people to go, you know what, I've got this problem. What would you do in that situation? Or how do you do this? And that for me was invaluable, was tapping into these networks, going to these events and speaking to like-minded businesses to understand how I could make a big difference in my business.
So to get growth out limits, you need to know what those limits are and then work around them.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Last question. You live and work in Birmingham. West Midlands must be a natural place to grow your business. What's any piece of advice you might have for West Midlands-based businesses as they look to grow and scale?
I mean, if you'd asked me that 10 years ago, I'd been like, don't get out of here. Oh my God, there's nothing here. But now it's a completely different story. I mean, the amount of support that's available is incredible. We've gone from a very small 4-person office to a £25 million business this year. And that's been down to Birmingham being that cultural melting pot. You know, we've been able to find the right resource. We've been able to get to the level of support over the last 5 years that allowed us to scale at pace. And in terms of being able to grow when we needed to grow at those different phases, at those different stages of growth, we needed different levels of support. So when we were first starting up, we needed different level of funding and funding support, understanding how to recruit the right people. When we came to £10 million, we needed a different level of how do you have HR operations? What are the accreditations that I need to be able to get bigger contracts or get more business? And then at this next phase, it is about making sure that it's sustainable, making sure that we can now prepare for the next level and next phase of growth. And now there is Tech West Midlands, which has been phenomenal in helping us build our understanding of what technology is out there. We're introducing AI in the next couple of months, obviously. And we have a number of different support networks within the region that has allowed us to do that effectively.
Fantastic. Wonderful, inspirational story. Thank you, Kavita. And for our audience, you can check out this podcast and our 3 previous podcasts at businessgrowthwestmidlands.org.uk/podcast, or you can listen on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcast and more. You can also visit the Business Growth West Midlands website and book a session with an advisor today. Obviously, you've also got 120 events across the next 2 weeks, so I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks.